This is truly something that I didn't dream that we could do. And the fact that we could do it, that is because, again, the support of the entire community, the will of the entire organization.
This is the James Cancer-Free World podcast. I'm Steve Wartenberg, and my guest is Dr. Zihai Li. Zihai is the founding director of the Pelotonia Institute for Immuno-Oncology, and the Institute is a world leader in understanding and advancing the development and use of new immunotherapy treatments for patients. Zihai will give us an overview on the growth of the Institute and some of the projects that are improving treatment options and outcomes for patients here at the James and far beyond. Welcome back to the podcast.
Well, Steve, good to be with you.
So this is perfect timing. This is the Wednesday after Pelotonia,
yes,
the fundraising bike ride that has funded $104 million for the Institute, and you rode. So how was your Pelotonia experience this past weekend?
It was amazing. This was, wait a minute, sixth time in a row I rode for Pelotonia. And Pelotonia, as you know, it's an amazing organization. It's full of passionate people. They believe in science. They believe that the way to cure cancer is to finding knowledge, new therapeutics to deal with disease head on. We are very fortunate to have the support of the Pelotonia community. So, participating in the riding was really highlight of my life here every year. Every year, the first weekend of August, I've been doing this. And again, every time I think when I rode the bike, I didn't feel like I was actually riding a bike. I felt like I was doing something special. And I was surrounded by people, by folks lying up on the road, by fellow riders who joined this movement with me, with everyone. So I feel like we were marching for a purposeful course, right? For a purposeful destination, that is to end cancer as we know it. And so every year, it was a moment for me to recharge, to be inspired again and again. So I'm looking forward to the ride next year. It's an inspiring moment, and I think folks who've been riding for Pelotonia, who have been supportive even as a volunteer and so forth, they understand exactly what I mean. But for those of you who have never done that, I encourage you to really experience that and come and join us. And I assure you, this will change your life.
I agree. And the Pelotonia Institute for Immuno-Oncology is changing people's lives. And it was by coincidence about exactly 5 years ago, I remember the press conference where they introduced you,
yeah,
and that Pelotonia was going to give $104 million and to help build a world leader in immuno-oncology. And so sort of fill us in on the big picture of how you've grown in the past 5 years and expanded your team and where you're at.
We, as you said, exactly launched Pelotonia Institute for Immuno-Oncology 5 years ago. In fact, it was publicly announced in front of the James on August 18th, 2019. And this was, I think, historic moment. And this shows the collective commitment of the organization, the community, to make huge progress in the field of immuno-oncology. I was very lucky to be recruited at that time, at that particular moment, and to map out a strategy to really build a comprehensive institute. When I say comprehensive, I mean works in basic discovery, translational research, as well as clinical immuno-oncology.
Translational means bringing it from the lab to the bedside, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the knowledge you learn in a laboratory has to be somehow be translated into the bedside. In other words, we need to see the impact of our knowledge on patients. So we quickly launched the 5-year strategic plan after extensive dialogue with the community as well as our external scientific advisory board members, we developed 4 important areas in immuno-oncology. But it's about discovery, right? Discover new pathways to turn on the immune system. It's about discover knowledge to overcome some of the limitations of current immunotherapeutics. It's about conducting novel clinical trials. Of course, 2 things are important to do that. One is talent.
Yes.
It's people, right? We need to bring people here. The second thing is technology, right? So we made huge progress in both fronts. And in terms of recruitment, we recruit 32 amazing investigators, faculty members from around the nation to join us. And this adds to the existing faculties, both in basic research and clinical medicine. Now we have more than 100 members in Pelotonia Institute for Immuno-Oncology. In terms of technology, we developed, I think, one of the best state-of-art immune monitoring technology platform. This enables our researchers and physicians to really understand the immune system in excruciating details, so that, again, we will learn more about each patient specifically to figure out the best way to deal with their cancer. This technology platform allows us to look at almost every cell in the tumor microenvironment, every molecule that expressed by the cancer cells as well as immune cells in great precision. And of course, with that, we generate enormous amount of data. So then we recruit a whole bunch of people. We call big data scientists, computational folks, utilizing artificial intelligence, machine learning, and computational power to decode some of the data to understand really what is going on. So just perhaps give you some numbers. I mentioned we recruit more than 30 new faculties. Our faculty members have established their laboratory, their teams. They work tirelessly in the field of immuno-oncology. They compete extremely well for extramural funding at national level. So, for example, we now obtain $39 million extramural funding nationally, half of which, more than $22 million coming from National Cancer Institute. We have published 1,200 papers, manuscripts, scientific manuscripts, and we conduct more than 230 immuno-oncology trials. Many of those trials are actively recruiting patients. These are testing the next generation immunotherapeutics and so forth. We have invented more than 70 technologies with 56 patents granted. And this is truly something that I didn't dream that we could do. And the fact that we could do it, that is because, again, the support of the entire community, the will of the entire organization. So we move together. And with this kind of momentum, I think we can go even further and further in the next 5 years. So we're looking forward to that.
What's an example of someone you've recruited recently?
I'm very proud to actually announce that we just recruited Dr. Glenn Barber from University of Miami in Florida to join us. He just joined us this month. Actually, he also participated in the Pelotonia ride this weekend.
So he's only been here a month and he already rode?
Exactly, not even a month, right? Wow. So just 2 weeks. So just a few words about Dr. Barber. Dr. Barber is an internationally renowned immunologist. He grew up in UK, did his PhD in London, but came to United States for last 20 plus years. He was department chair of cell biology in University of Miami. His contribution to immunology, to the field of immuno-oncology is enormous. One of the key discoveries he made was actually to understand how immune system is turned on. And if I want to be a little bit more specific, he understands a mechanism to sense DNA in the cytoplasm. So if you recall, Steve, we have a cell. Cell has a nucleus.
Right. Okay.
Outside of the nucleus, there's something called cytoplasm. Of course, there's cell membrane, right, together as a cell. Your DNA is in your nucleus. When DNA somehow leaked out to the cytoplasm, something is wrong.
Oh, okay.
That means something dangerous is happening. That means you lose integrity of that cell. And that is sensed by a molecule, specifically this molecule called STING, S-T-I-N-G. The acronym stands for Stimulator of Interferon Gene. He discovered that. So Dr. Barber discovered this molecule, STING, and it turns out this molecule is absolutely important for initiating immune responses. And so much so, many cancer cells actually figured out a way to turn this thing off. So now
the cancer cells have figured out to turn it off. Okay.
Almost without exception, when cancer develops, they have to evade the immune system. They have multiple tricks they do. I think last time we talked about the PD-1, some other checkpoint molecules, but intracellularly, they figured out a way to turn off this molecule called STING. I mean, guess what? So Dr. Barber has figured out all kinds of ways to turn this system back on using small molecules and so on. We are very pleased he's joining us. He's joining Pelotonia Institute for Immuno-Oncology. And his leadership, he will create a new center within PIIO. The center is called Center for Innate Immunity and Inflammation. And he's already doing all kinds of clinical trials, try turning STING pathway for treatment of leukemia and solid tumor and so forth. I'm more than thrilled to have him to be on board. This group is growing bigger and bigger as we speak. So I'm just very fortunate to be part of this.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, you can fill us in on a few of the bigger projects that are nearing completion, that are going to change the world.
Great.
The best outcomes for treating cancer come from early detection and early diagnosis.
The James Cancer Diagnostic Center at Ohio State
is designed to provide rapid evaluation and a clear diagnosis.
We are transforming care by giving patients direct access
to cancer experts who study and treat cancer every day.
If you think you have cancer, the choice is clear.
Choose the James Cancer Diagnostic Center.
We're back with Zihai Li, and let's talk about some of the bigger projects from the Institute. And let's start with one that a couple other people have mentioned on the podcast. You're working with brain tumors in a really exciting new way. So fill us in what you and your lab are doing.
We are actively working on a new therapeutics for primary brain tumor. Primary central nervous system tumor.
Primary meaning it started there.
Started there. It's called glioblastoma.
This is very one of, serious kind, yeah.
One of the most deadly cancer that, frankly, we don't have much option. And traditionally, if it's found early, if it's accessible, you can perform surgery. And you can also try to consolidate that with some radiation therapy. Chemotherapy does not really work very well. So that whatever chemo we're using sort of considered salvage therapeutics. So we desperately need newer strategy. Many people in the field, including myself, believe perhaps cell therapy is the way to do it. So when we say cell therapy, we mean we can extract immune cells, so to make them as weapons and as a killing machine. We can make them as a killing machine in a laboratory and expand them in great quantity, then send them back to patient, in this case, to the brain, and to fight cancer. So this will give rise to, we think, a great specificity, because you don't want to injure any neighboring normal brain cells when you try to treat cancer cells. And one way we're doing this in a lab is based on a discovery we made a number of years ago that has to do with a protein that is involved in immune evasion. So this protein is expressed by the brain tumor cells, the GBM cells. And then this molecule is also expressed by some of the bad players in the brain tumor environment, something called regulatory T cells. So the idea is that we can hit both with the same approach, that is targeting tumor cells and targeting these bad players in the immune system. So we made something called antibody. We actually further engineer this antibody through multiple processes. This process called humanization. We humanize this antibody. And we have tested this particular antibody for its specificity in targeting those two things, two enemies we just mentioned.
This is when you take the blood out, genetically modify it to do what you just said,
exactly,
then put it back.
Exactly. So this strategy, once you have the antigen, you have the molecule, right, the target, you made antibody, then you can engineer something exactly as you said, a so-called chimeric antigen receptor, or CAR. So chimeric antigen receptor basically can be made to be expressed by T cells, one of the killer cells in the immune system.
So this is that CAR T cell therapy that's been around for a while, and if I understand correctly, it's always been used for blood cancers. You're making the leap to solid tumor cancers.
Exactly right. So this is CAR T cell has been approved for treatment of a variety of leukemia as well as multiple myeloma. Nothing has been proved for solid tumor, such as brain cancer. But we think this is a potential way to do it. So we have this exciting approach that has been shown to be effective for treatment of glioblastoma using preclinical models. So we're actively working on getting FDA approval, the Food and Drug Administration approval, to actually do this in human. And my anticipation is that perhaps by the end of this year, we will be able to treat the first patient with this particular therapeutics. And so we're very excited about this, and I think this is supported by rich science, and the target is there, the cell can be made. I think we're confident this might work.
So if I understand the implications of this, that the CAR T cell for blood cancers is a big game changer and has really led to better outcomes for patients, then the breakthrough to getting to solid tumors, your work with brain tumors, and can lead to it being used for all sorts of solid tumors, and that this could be just huge down the road.
That is exactly right. I think this particular platform, by the way, is first in man endeavor. Nobody's done this. This is something that we're leading this. If it works for patients with GBM or glioblastoma, it might work for some other solid tumors as well.
So CAR T cell therapy for glioblastomas is a big breakthrough that the Institute's doing in your lab.
Yes.
And what's another big breakthrough?
Well, immunotherapy is a very young field, even though we've been dreaming about this for hundreds of years. There are a lot of things we don't know. And I'm old enough to remember some of the setbacks before. When I say before, only 20 years ago. So there are a lot of things we don't know. Let me just give you one example. So cancer is a big burden to human health and everything, to the society. One thing that is very interesting, and we all know, is that there is difference between men and women in cancer incidence and mortality. So we're not talking about the cancer of reproductive origin. We talk about cancer of the lung, the liver, the bladder, the colon, and so forth. So all those cancers, men, again, diagnose more, the high incidence. Again, men do not do well. So then you ask the question, why is that? Is there a biological reason? Is this simply reflecting high-risk behavior that men do, such as smoking, drinking? But it turns out if you correct all those socioeconomic factors, lifestyle factors, and so forth, still men do worse than women. So there might be a biological basis for that. So we, in collaboration with multiple people in a laboratory, trying to figure out why. Is there immunological basis for sex bias? So it turns out, indeed, that both Y chromosome that only men have and androgen, or called male hormone, play a very important role in immune responses against cancer.
Oh, not in. Okay.
So this is let me try to explain this way. So we know, for example, with prostate cancer, the men suffer. One way to treat it is to block the androgen, block testosterone or male hormone. Right. So because the prostate cancer basically dependent on the signal to grow. It turns out T lymphocytes we talked about before, CAR T and so forth, T cells also express receptors for androgen, for male hormone. So then the question is, why is that, right? So what if you block the androgen receptor signaling on T cell? Will you make T cell work better? The answer is yes. So there's a major discovery made by one of my students in a laboratory, Tony Kwong, who is actually pursuing his career in oncology. And we published this paper in Science Immunology a couple of years ago. That inspired a whole bunch of effort here to study sex as a biological variable in health, in cancer. So we actually submit a multi-investigator, multi-project program project grant application to National Cancer Institute, and fortunately got funded. And this is in collaboration with another group in Los Angeles, that is Cedars-Sinai in California, and to systematically, once again, understand what are the differences between men and women, what are the genes that are encoded by sex chromosome, that is X and Y chromosome, that actually modulate the immune responses. I'm giving you this example simply to indicate that there are lots of questions in the field, right? Some of the questions are very fundamental, very basic. You may even say, well, how is that going to help us, right? This seems to be a curiosity-driven question. Does this have impact? Well, the answer is likely it will have impact, because right now we can actually design a clinical trial by blocking androgen and give immune checkpoint blockade at the same time for treatment of bladder cancer, for example. And we're doing exactly that.
So wait, help me understand that. So you can block the male hormones from, that's what I'm, then what? You block them from doing what? That the immune system isn't blocked from doing its job.
Right. So it turns out the male hormone actually suppresses the immune system, simply put. And specifically in this case, it got in a little bit more detail, that is suppress a T cell response.
Which are the immune killer cells.
Which are the immune killer cells. And logically, if you remove the suppressive switch, then you will make a T cell better. So, and we think that is, again, in some preclinical models we found, that alone can explain why male do worse than female.
Now, have you also found that women have different hormone receptors that could also be targets down the road? And I'm thinking of breast cancer, which is caused by hormones and estrogen, I believe, right?
Exactly. So this is exactly the study that we got funded from NCI. And so we're going to look at not just male hormone, we'll look at female hormone. We're not only going to look at the Y chromosome, we're going to look at X chromosome. And basically to take a holistic approach to understand exactly what's the biological basis for sex bias in cancer, which again, as I said, it's almost universal. It doesn't matter what cancer you're talking about. There's a male bias.
Wow, that's really fascinating. How about one more project your team's working on?
Well, the PIIO, that's Pelotonia Institute for Immuno-Oncology, is full of talented and smart people, far smarter than me. So we have a big cell therapy group. We mentioned cell therapy for brain tumor. Cell therapy is already here, front and center for treatment of leukemia. One of the problems for current CAR T strategy for treatment of leukemia and lymphoma is relapse. In other words, patient may respond to the therapy and then later did not respond, and the cancer come back. So the question is, why is that? Well, it turns out many of the escape or failure of response is due to loss of particular target. So therefore, instead of targeting just one molecule, what about targeting multiple molecules? Why not 2? Why not 3? So we have a team of scientists and physicians led by Dr. Marcos de Lima and Dr. Sumi Vasu. And they are really working on something called triple CAR T platform. So
Triple, okay.
So instead of targeting one molecule, they basically target 3.
So when they genetically re-engineer the immune system, not just to target one, 3 molecules, okay.
Exactly. And this particular trial, again, has never been done by anybody else. This is the first in class kind of trial here only at the James. And this trial, again, after painstaking hard work, we obtained the approval by the US FDA, and this trial is ongoing. Again, it's targeting 3 molecules, specifically CD19, CD20, and CD22. We think this strategy will prevent relapse. It will be better than the first generation CAR T that's currently being practiced clinically. So we have already treated 12 patients, and so far we found this particular approach is safe and likely will elicit clinical efficacy.
Wow. And Marcos Lima was on the podcast recently, and he talked about how you, the James, is now, instead of having to send these cells, T cells, out to a lab in New Jersey or California, you have your own facility here to re-engineer them, and that's speeding up and improving the process.
Oh, yes. That is a very good point. So we have what we call GMP facility. That's a good manufacturing practice facility, which manufacture product for human use. And this is a rigorous regulation by the US FDA. Indeed, we have capacity to engineer cells, any cells in the immune system.
So that helps with developing new ones, not just
absolutely.
Yeah, so
yes,
you're at the forefront of everything.
Yeah, we was absolutely. Once we find it is a particular target, we made, let's say, antibody towards it, and we can engineer T cells to have specificity to target that particular molecule, and we can do our trial right here. We don't need any pharma. We don't need any expensive GMP facility somewhere else, and guess what? This can only happen in a comprehensive cancer center with support from Pelotonia, for example, to do it.
Wow. So let's finish up with a question that I'm always curious about, that all these 3 big projects you just mentioned, yours with the brain tumor, the bladder cancer, and triple CAR T cell therapy, takes years.
Yes.
And lots of people and ups and downs. How do you keep going? You have a lot of passion and determination. What motivates you against the odds? Because it's hard to do what you're doing. What motivates you to keep going over years at a time to come up with a new way to treat glioblastomas and other people doing the same thing?
Well, I always feel privileged to be able to sort of satisfy my curiosity about life and everything, but at the same time doing something that is impactful. And I think the combination of the curiosity and the willingness to serve and to help it really drives a lot of us, not just me. I think every one of us who are passionate and who are really working day and night and trying to find something that's useful. And it is intellectually satisfying, right? When you figure out something, right? You figure out an answer to something that's mysterious. I think that's probably part of human, a core difference between human and other species. We are very curious. We want to know unknowns, right? We always take that as a challenge. We never say no to anything. So that clearly served me well. And again, and to see really the impact, in patients' real lives. I mean, that of course is very rewarding.
Wow, I like the way you put that. I've never heard that before. A combination of scientific curiosity and wanting to help people comes together and keeps you going.
Yes. So, I mean, again, and this is, I just feel very, very privileged to be doing just that.
Okay, well, I think we're lucky to have you here, you and your team of more than 100 great scientists, and thanks for filling us in, and perhaps you'll come back in the future and fill us in on even more good stuff.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you. This podcast is brought to you by the Ohio State University Comprehensive Cancer Center, Arthur G. James Cancer Hospital, and Richard J. Solove Research Institute. For more information, check out our website, cancer.osu.edu.